The wheezing. That's the sound I'll never forget. The desperate, rasping sound of my 5-year-old son, Leo, fighting for breath, his small face turning a terrifying shade of blue around his lips. His eyes, wide with panic, were fixed on mine. My name is Virginia, and what I saw in that moment nearly shattered me. But it also forged something new inside me, a core of pure, unadulterated ice. It had happened so fast. 1 minute, Leo was happily playing with his cars on the living room floor during our weekly and usually dreaded family visit. The next, my sister Natalia was kneeling beside him, a sickeningly sweet smile on her face, holding out a cookie, a peanut butter cookie. "Just a little bite, sweetie," Natalia cooed, her voice dripping with false affection. "It'll help with that fussy tummy of yours." "Natalia, no!" I'd lunged forward, but I was too late. She'd already pressed it to his lips, and Leo, trusting his aunt, had taken a bite. My mother, Joanna, sat on the sofa, observing the scene with a detached air, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Virginia, don't be so dramatic," she'd said, waving a dismissive hand. "A little bit won't hurt him. You coddle him far too much with this allergy nonsense." Nonsense. My son's life-threatening anaphylactic reaction to peanuts was nonsense to them. The EpiPen was in my purse. Thank God. I jabbed it into Leo's thigh, my hands shaking but my mind surprisingly clear. "Call 911, I screamed at Colin, my husband, who was already dialing, his face pale with horror. While Colin relayed information to the dispatcher, I cradled Leo, whispering reassurances I didn't feel. The wheezing was getting worse. His skin was erupting in hives. Natalia had the audacity to look annoyed. "See? You're overreacting. He's just putting on a show for attention." That's when the ice fully formed. I looked from my struggling son to my sister's petulant face, then to my mother's smug one. The paramedics arrived in a blur, whisking Leo away, Colin going with him. I stayed behind. I had unfinished business. Once the ambulance sirens faded, a chilling quiet descended. Natalia started to gather her purse. "Well, that was eventful. I hope you're satisfied, Virginia, making such a scene." Joanna nodded. "You really need to get a grip, dear. This hysteria isn't good for anyone, least of all Leo." I let them talk. I walked over to the bookshelf, my movements calm, deliberate. Tucked behind a photo frame was a tiny, almost invisible lens. I plucked the small digital camera from its hiding place. "What's that?" Natalia asked, a flicker of unease in her eyes. "This?" I held it up. "This is your undoing." Their expression shifted from arrogance to confusion. "Every moment of your abuse is recorded," I said, my voice devoid of any emotion except a cold, hard finality. "You feeding my son poison, Natalia. You encouraging her, mother, dismissing his agony. It's all here," Joanna scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous, Virginia. What are you talking about? Abuse? We were trying to help." "Help?" My laugh was bitter. "You will answer for this. And by the way," I continued, my gaze unwavering, "I've already called Child Protective Services. They're meeting me at the hospital, and I have a lawyer specializing in child endangerment on retainer. His name is Robert. You will never be alone with my son again." The color drained from Natalia's face. Joanna's jaw actually dropped. "You wouldn't," she whispered, her voice suddenly hoarse. "Oh, I would," I said. "I already have." Just then, 2 uniformed police officers walked through the still open front door. Officer Cade, a man I'd spoken to earlier that week when I'd outlined my fears about my family, nodded at me gravely. "Virginia?" he asked. "Yes, Officer Cade. They're right here," I said, gesturing to my stunned sister and mother. "And this is the footage I told you I'd get if they ever tried anything." Natalia found her voice, shrill and panicked. "She's lying. She's crazy. She's trying to set us up." Joanna chimed in, trying to regain her composure. "Officer, This is a family misunderstanding. My daughter is overly emotional. Officer Cade ignored them, his attention on the small camera in my hand. May I? I handed it to him. He and his partner watched the playback on its small screen. It was only a few minutes of footage, but it was damning. The casual cruelty in Natalia's voice as she offered the cookie, Leo's innocent acceptance, my mother's dismissive wave, my desperate shouts, then Leo's small, choked gasps. I watched the officers' faces harden. They exchanged a look. Officer Cade turned back to Natalia and Joanna. Their smug, entitled masks had completely shattered, replaced by a dawning, unadulterated terror. Natalia, Joanna, Officer Cade said, his voice firm and official, you are both under arrest for aggravated assault and felony child endangerment. The sound Natalia made was something between a gasp and a sob. Joanna just stared, mouth agape, as the handcuffs clicked shut around their wrists. Their faces, just moments before so confident and cruel, had utterly collapsed. It wasn't joy I felt, not then. It was the grim, hollow satisfaction of a battle begun. The hospital was a blur of beeping machines and hushed, urgent voices. Colin met me at the emergency room entrance, his face etched with worry, but he managed a reassuring smile when he saw me. He's stable, Ginny, he said, pulling me into a tight hug. They gave him more epinephrine, steroids, antihistamines. He's sleeping now. The doctor said he'll be okay. Relief, so potent it was dizzying, washed over me. I sagged against him, the adrenaline finally beginning to ebb, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its place. Thank God. While Leo rested, I met Sela, the CPS worker. She had kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. Virginia, she began gently after introducing herself, I've reviewed Officer Cade's initial report and seen a portion of the video. What your son endured is horrific. I'm so sorry. I just nodded, tears welling up. They've always been like this. Dismissive of his allergy, dismissive of me. We're going to ensure Leo's safety, Sela said firmly. The police have already issued an emergency protective order. Natalia and Joanna are not to have any contact with you or Leo. We'll work on getting a more permanent one in place. She asked me a lot of questions about past incidents, about Natalia and Joanna's behavior. It was painful to recount, but Sela listened patiently, taking meticulous notes. The next morning, after a sleepless night in a chair beside Leo's hospital bed, I met Robert, my lawyer. He was sharp, no nonsense, and exuded a quiet confidence that was incredibly reassuring. The video is damning, Virginia, he said, after I'd explained everything, and he'd watched the full clip on my laptop. Their actions are clear, premeditated even, given your prior warnings to them about the severity of Leo's allergy. Premeditated? The word hung in the air. Potentially. We'll explore that. For now, our priority is Leo's protection and ensuring they face the full consequences. The DA's office will be taking this very seriously, especially with this footage. He outlined the next steps: filing for a permanent restraining order, cooperating with the police investigation, and preparing for potential criminal charges against Natalia and Joanna. This will be a fight, Virginia, he warned. They won't go down quietly. He was right. Natalia and Joanna were released on bail less than 24 hours after their arrest. The shock I'd seen on their faces as they were cuffed had apparently worn off quickly. It was replaced by a chilling, familiar defiance. The smear campaign began almost immediately. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts from extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Virginia, dear, I heard there was some trouble, one aunt began, her voice syrupy sweet. Surely this is all a terrible misunderstanding. Natalia and your mother love Leo. They tried to kill him, I stated flatly. A shocked silence then, Now, Virginia, that's a dreadful thing to say. Families should stick together. Think of the scandal. I hung up. Colin was my rock. He screened my calls, held me when I cried from sheer exhaustion and rage, and fiercely defended me to anyone who dared question my actions. You did what you had to do, Ginny, he said, his arm around me as we finally brought Leo home from the hospital. You protected our son. That's all that matters. Leo was subdued, clinging to me, but physically recovering. The emotional scars, I knew, would take longer to heal. Then came the social media assault. Natalia, ever the drama queen, posted a carefully crafted statement on her Instagram. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. My heart is broken by the recent events and the cruel accusations being leveled against me and my mother, it began. She painted a picture of a loving aunt, deeply concerned for her sensitive nephew. She claimed Leo had only a mild rash, and that I, Virginia, had flown into an uncontrollable rage, exaggerating the incident to deliberately alienate them. She's always been dramatic, the post insinuated, accompanied by a soft focus photo of her looking tearful and victimized. All we want is what's best for Leo and to be part of his life. This malicious campaign to destroy our family is devastating. The comments section was a mixed bag, but enough people who didn't know the truth, chimed in with sympathy for her. She's accusing me. I stared at my phone, my blood boiling. After what she did, she's saying I orchestrated this? Colin read it over my shoulder, his jaw tight. Don't let her get to you, Ginny. It's a desperate move. Robert warned us they'd try this. But it did get to me. The audacity, the sheer gall of it. They weren't just unremorseful. They were doubling down, trying to rewrite reality. My resolve, already solid, hardened into something akin to tempered steel. They wanted a fight? They were about to get one they would never forget. The legal battle began with a vengeance. Robert filed for a permanent restraining order the day after Natalia's Instagram performance. The hearing was set for the following week. In the meantime, the emergency protective order remained in place, a thin shield I clung to. The calls from family didn't stop. They just shifted tactics. Virginia, your mother is beside herself, my Uncle Peter said, his voice heavy with disapproval. She's not eating. She's not sleeping. You're tearing this family apart. She watched Natalia poison my son, Uncle Peter, I replied, my voice flat. She did nothing. She encouraged it. Poison? Don't you think you're being a bit theatrical? It was a cookie, for goodness sake. An error in judgment, perhaps, but not malicious. An error in judgment. The phrase echoed Joanna's own dismissive words. I realized then how deep the rot went, how many of them were conditioned to enable, to excuse, to prioritize keeping the peace over actual safety and accountability. I have it on video, Uncle Peter, I said, my patience wearing thin. Every second of their error in judgment. Perhaps you'd like to see it. He mumbled something about me being vindictive and hung up. Good. Let them choose their sides. The lines were being drawn, and I was fine with where I stood. Natalia and Joanna hired a lawyer, a slick, aggressive man named Wayne. His reputation preceded him. He was known for tearing victims apart on the stand and twisting facts until they were unrecognizable. His first move was to contest the restraining order naturally. His office sent Robert a barrage of documents, claiming the hidden camera footage was obtained illegally, that it was an invasion of privacy, that it had been doctored. Standard tactics, Robert assured me during a late-night call. They're trying to muddy the waters, create doubt. The camera was in your own home, recording events that directly impacted your child's safety. It's admissible. Don't worry. But I did worry. I worried about Leo. I worried about the toll this was taking on Colin, who was working extra hours to cover my lost wages. I'd taken a leave of absence, and the mounting legal fees. I worried about the sheer, unadulterated malice emanating from my own mother and sister. How could they be so devoid of remorse, so focused on their own reputations when my son had nearly died? I learned to compartmentalize. During the day, I was supermom, cheerful, patient, creating a bubble of normalcy for Leo. We built blanket forts, read stories, had dance parties in the living room. He was starting to smile more, the haunted look in his eyes slowly receding. But at night, after he was asleep, I'd sit with Colin, going over case details with Robert, my mind a whirl of legal jargon and strategic planning. The anger was a constant simmering beneath the surface. Then Joanna escalated things. It was a Tuesday morning. I was dropping Leo off at his preschool, a place that had always been his safe haven. His teacher, Ms. Emily, met me at the door, her expression troubled. "Virginia, a package arrived for Leo this morning," she said, lowering her voice. "It was delivered by courier. There's no return address, but, well, the gift tag says, 'From Grandma J with love.'" A cold dread washed over me. Grandma J. Joanna. "What is it?" I asked, my voice tight. "We haven't opened it, of course," Ms. Emily said quickly. "Given the circumstances you mentioned last week, we thought it best to wait for you." She led me to the office, where a brightly wrapped box sat on the secretary's desk. It looked innocuous enough, decorated with cartoon animals. But knowing who it was from, it felt like a bomb. This was a clear violation of the Emergency Protective Order. No contact meant no contact. Not directly, not indirectly, not through innocent-looking packages sent to his preschool. "She's trying to get to him," I whispered, a fresh wave of fury washing over me. "She's deliberately defying the order." Colin arrived within minutes, his face grim. We called Robert, then the police. Officer Cade, bless his heart, responded himself. He carefully opened the package. Inside was a stuffed giraffe, Leo's favorite animal, and a handwritten card. "My dearest Leo," it read, in Joanna's familiar looping script. "Grandma misses you so much. I hope you love this little guy. I'm so sorry for all the fuss. Your mommy is just very upset right now, but it will all blow over. We'll see you soon. All my love, Grandma J." The audacity, the sheer manipulative gall. It will all blow over. As if this was some minor tiff, a childish squabble. Officer Cade documented everything. "This is a clear breach," he confirmed. "We'll file a report, and it will be added to the evidence for your restraining order hearing and for the criminal case." Joanna wasn't just defiant. She was stupidly arrogant, convinced the rules didn't apply to her. She thought she could still manipulate her way back into Leo's life, right under our noses, right under the laws. She was wrong. This latest stunt just added another nail to her coffin, and to Natalia's. And it fueled my determination even more. They weren't just fighting for their reputations anymore. They were actively trying to undermine the legal protections in place for my son. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about survival. Joanna's stunt with the package at Leo's preschool lit a new fire under me. It wasn't just about the present danger anymore. It was about the past, about the insidious pattern of their behavior that I tolerated, excused, or simply been too blind to see for far too long. "We need to dig, Colin," I said that night, after Leo was asleep and the house was quiet. "There has to be more. This can't be the first time they've plotted." Colin, ever my steadfast partner, nodded. "What are you thinking?" "Old emails, texts, diaries, anything. I need to understand how we got here, how they got here." So we began to excavate the ruins of my family relationships. We started with old email accounts, sifting through years of messages. So much of it was mundane, everyday chatter. But then little things started to emerge. An email from Joanna after I'd proudly announced my first promotion. "That's nice, dear, but don't let it go to your head. Natalia is having a bit of a hard time right now. Perhaps you could offer her some support instead of boasting." Boasting? I'd simply shared good news. Then there were the texts, snippets of conversations I'd saved, not knowing why at the time, but now they painted a grim picture. Natalia, complaining about a birthday gift I'd given her, calling it cheap and thoughtless to a mutual friend who then forwarded it to me. Joanna constantly undermining my parenting choices, always siding with Natalia if there was even a hint of disagreement. Virginia, you're being too sensitive, was a common refrain, or Natalia didn't mean it like that, you're twisting her words. Gaslighting, pure and simple. I just hadn't had a name for it back then. The hardest part was my childhood diaries. I'd kept them sporadically, little pink books with flimsy locks. Reading them was like stepping back into a past I'd tried to forget. Natalia broke my favorite doll today. Mom said it was an accident, but Nat was smiling. Mom bought Nat ice cream. I was 8. Got an A on my history paper. Showed Mom. She asked if Natalia helped me. Natalia got a C. I was 12. Natalia told everyone at school I stuffed my bra. It's not true. Mom said I shouldn't wear such tight tops if I don't want people to talk. I was 14. A pattern emerged, stark and undeniable. Natalia's simmering, lifelong jealousy of me. Joanna's consistent dismissal of my feelings, her blatant favoritism towards Natalia, her constant efforts to make me doubt my own perceptions. It was all there, in black and white, in my own childish scrawl, and in the cold digital text of old messages. This wasn't sudden, was it? Colin said softly, looking over my shoulder at a particularly damning email exchange where Joanna had blamed me for Natalia failing a college exam because I hadn't helped her enough. No, I whispered, a cold wave of realization washing over me. This has been brewing for years, decades even. The peanut incident. It wasn't an isolated act of cruelty. It was a culmination. Any lingering shred of doubt, any tiny misguided flicker of familial obligation I might have felt, was extinguished. These women weren't just flawed, they were toxic, they were dangerous, and they had always been this way. I'd just been too close, too hopeful, too desperate for a normal family to see it clearly. Then, Colin found it. He'd been meticulously going through backups of old phone data, a painstaking process. "Ginny," he called out, his voice tight. "You need to see this." He turned his laptop screen towards me. It was a string of text messages between Natalia and Joanna, dated 3 months before the incident with Leo. "Natalia, Leo is so spoiled. Virginia babies him constantly with that stupid allergy. It's probably not even that bad." Joanna, "I know, dear. She's always been overprotective. He needs to be toughened up a bit. Kids are too coddled these days." Natalia, "Someone needs to show her. He can't go through life wrapped in cotton wool." Joanna, "Well, maybe you should take matters into your own hands next time you see him. A little exposure might do him good. You know, build up his tolerance." Natalia, "You think so?" Joanna, "Couldn't hurt to try. Sometimes a mother just knows best, even if it's not her mother." I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. Take matters into your own hands. A little exposure might do him good. Couldn't hurt to try. This wasn't just negligence. This wasn't an accident. This was premeditated. They had discussed it, planned it almost. Joanna hadn't just enabled Natalia in the moment. She had planted the seed. She had given her permission, encouragement even. Oh my God, I breathed, the full weight of their malice crashing down on me. They actually talked about doing this. Colin put his arm around me. "This is it, Ginny. This is the proof. This is what Robert needs." It was a bombshell. A sickening, horrifying bombshell. But it was also the final piece of the puzzle. The piece that proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that what they did to Leo wasn't just a mistake. It was a deliberate, calculated act of cruelty, born from years of resentment and a chilling disregard for my son's life. My resolve, already ironclad, became diamond. There would be no mercy. The text messages were a game changer. Robert was practically rubbing his hands with glee when we showed them to him. This is gold, Virginia. Pure gold. Premeditation is hard to prove, but this is as close as it gets. Wayne is going to have a very bad day, and he did. Wayne's motion to suppress the hidden camera footage was heard by Judge Miller, a stern, no-nonsense woman who, according to Robert, didn't suffer fools gladly. Wayne argued passionately, if predictably, about privacy violations and illegal recordings. Robert calmly presented our case. The camera was in my home, recording actions against my minor child, actions that constituted a violent felony. He then, with a slight dramatic flourish, presented the newly discovered text messages as evidence of intent and a pattern of disregard for Leo's safety. Judge Miller listened, her expression unreadable. After both sides had spoken, she delivered her ruling swiftly. "Mr. Schmidt," she said, her voice crisp, "while I appreciate your vigorous defense of your clients, the expectation of privacy does not extend to committing felonies against a child in his own home. Furthermore, these text messages paint a deeply disturbing picture. Motion to suppress is denied. The video footage is admissible." Wayne's face, usually so smug, tightened. Natalia and Joanna, sitting behind him, looked like they'd been slapped. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Then, somehow, the details of those text messages, the "toughen him up" and "take matters into your own hands" lines, were leaked to a popular local news blog. The blog post, titled "Text Reveal Chilling Premeditation in Peanut Allergy Attack Case," went viral in our community. The comments were brutal. "Monsters! How could a mother and sister do that? Toughen him up by nearly killing him? Lock them up and throw away the key? I hope that little boy is okay. Those women are pure evil." Public opinion, which had been somewhat swayed by Natalia's crocodile tears on Instagram, swung sharply and decisively against them. Their carefully constructed facade of victimhood crumbled under the weight of their own words. That's when Kennedy called. Kennedy was my mother's cousin, someone I hadn't seen much of since childhood. She'd always been on the fringes of the family, a bit of an outsider, and now I understood why. "Virginia, it's Kennedy," she said, her voice warm and kind. "I read that blog post, and, well, I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all by what Joanna and Natalia are capable of." "You're not?" "Honey, I've known them my whole life. Joanna was always manipulative, always playing favorites, and Natalia learned from the best. I had my own run-ins with them years ago. They tried to turn my own daughter against me after my divorce, spread the most vicious rumors." She paused, then said, "I just wanted to reach out, offer my support. What you're doing, standing up to them, it takes incredible courage. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And if you need someone to talk to, or even just a friendly face in court if it comes to that, I'm here." Her call was like a balm to my weary soul. To know that someone else in the family saw them for who they truly were, that I wasn't alone in this, meant more than I could say. Kennedy's validation, her shared experiences, further solidified my resolve. This wasn't just my fight. It was a fight against a pattern of abuse that had likely touched more lives than I knew. Natalia and Joanna became increasingly isolated. Friends who had initially offered them public support on social media quietly deleted their sympathetic comments. Whispers followed them in the grocery store. Their world was shrinking, and their desperation was palpable. Then came the pièce de résistance of their crumbling defense, Joanna's online apology video. She appeared on screen, makeup streaked, hair artfully disheveled, looking directly into the camera with wide, pleading eyes. "To my dearest daughter, Virginia," she began, her voice thick with manufactured emotion, "and to my precious grandson, Leo. My heart is broken into a million pieces. I was misguided. I was wrong. I never, ever meant for any harm to come to little Leo. I love him more than words can say. She sniffled, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Natalia, too, she's devastated. We were just trying to help, in our own clumsy way. We see now how wrong we were. Virginia, please, I'm begging you for Leo's sake. Find it in your heart to forgive us. Let us heal as a family. It was a performance worthy of a daytime soap opera, calculated, insincere, and utterly transparent. Colin and I watched it, speechless at first. Then I just started to laugh. It was a hollow, bitter sound. She really thinks this will work, I said, shaking my head. The comments section beneath the video was a bloodbath. Misguided? Lady, you conspired to poison your grandson. For Leo's sake, you should be in jail. The crocodile tears are Oscar-worthy. Too bad no one's buying it. Justice for Leo was trending. Her attempt to garner sympathy had backfired spectacularly. Instead of mending bridges, she torched them with a can of gasoline and a smirk, all while pretending to cry. The cracks in their defense weren't just appearing, they were becoming gaping chasms, and they were the ones holding the sledgehammers. The weeks leading up to the trial were a blur of legal consultations, witness preparations, and a gnawing anxiety that settled deep in my stomach. Leo was doing better, starting to laugh more freely, but he still had nightmares. Every time he coughed, my heart leapt into my throat. The fear was a constant companion. Robert, however, was the picture of calm confidence. We have them, Virginia, he said during one of our final prep sessions. The video is undeniable. The texts show premeditation. Their public statements have been disastrous. Wayne is a good lawyer, but even he can't spin gold out of this pile of, well, you know. He walked me through what to expect on the stand. Wayne will try to paint you as vindictive, as an overprotective, hysterical mother. He'll try to provoke you. Don't take the bait. Just stick to the facts. Tell your story, clearly and calmly. The truth is on our side. What if the jury doesn't see it that way? I asked, the fear bubbling up. They will, Robert said, his gaze steady. They're human beings. They'll see that video of Leo struggling to breathe. They'll hear those texts. They'll see your mother and sister for what they are. A week before the trial, the district attorney's office formally offered Natalia and Joanna a plea deal. It was surprisingly lenient, in my opinion, but Robert explained it was standard procedure to try and avoid a costly trial. They plead guilty to lesser charges: reckless endangerment for Natalia, contributing to the delinquency of a minor for Joanna. Something along those lines, Robert explained. They'd get probation, mandatory anger management, parenting classes, though they won't be allowed near Leo, obviously, and they'd have to agree to a lifetime restraining order. No jail time, but a criminal record. Will they take it? Colin asked. Robert snorted. Knowing them? And knowing Wayne's ego? Unlikely. They're probably still convinced they can charm their way out of this, or that Wayne can pull a rabbit out of his hat. He was right. 2 days later, Wayne formally rejected the plea deal on their behalf. My clients maintain their innocence, his statement to the press read, and are confident they will be exonerated at trial. They look forward to clearing their names and exposing the malicious agenda behind these baseless accusations. Baseless accusations. Malicious agenda. The sheer, unmitigated gall. They're delusional, I said to Colin, reading the article on my phone. Completely and utterly delusional. Or terrified, Colin suggested, and lashing out. Maybe both. But their continued denial, their refusal to accept even a shred of responsibility, only strengthened my resolve. They deserved whatever was coming to them. The night before the trial was the longest of my life. I tucked Leo in, read him 3 stories, and kissed his forehead a dozen times, inhaling the sweet scent of his hair. He looked so small, so innocent. The thought of what they'd done to him, what they'd tried to do, sent a fresh wave of cold fury through me. Colin held me close as I finally drifted into a restless sleep. my dreams filled with distorted images of Natalia's smirk and Joanna's dismissive wave. I woke with a start to a notification ping on my phone. It was a direct message on a social media platform I rarely used from an anonymous account with no profile picture and no followers. The message was short, chillingly simple. Some mothers protect their children too much. Sometimes it backfires. My blood ran cold. There was no doubt in my mind who it was from or who had put them up to it. It was them. A last-ditch, pathetic attempt to intimidate me, to plant a seed of fear. I showed it to Colin, my hand trembling slightly. His face darkened. Those cowardly... They're trying to scare you. He was right. But as the initial shock wore off, something else rose in its place. Not fear, not anymore. It was rage. A pure, white-hot rage. They thought this would make me back down. They thought a vague, cowardly threat would make me question everything I was doing to protect my son. They had no idea who they were dealing with. It backfires, does it? I said, my voice low and dangerous. We'll see about that. This pathetic attempt at intimidation didn't scare me. It fueled me. It was the final confirmation that I was doing the right thing. They weren't just cruel and manipulative. They were bullies, resorting to anonymous threats when their public lies failed. Tomorrow they would face me. Tomorrow they would face the consequences, and I would not flinch. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, but the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Kennedy gave me a reassuring nod from the public gallery. Colin squeezed my hand before I took my seat beside Robert. Across the aisle, Natalia and Joanna sat with Wayne, looking pale but attempting an air of composure that didn't quite reach their eyes. My testimony came first. Robert led me through it gently, patiently. I recounted the events of that horrible day, my voice trembling at times, especially when I described Leo's struggle to breathe, but I kept it steady. I told them about the years of dismissiveness, the constant undermining, the fear I'd lived with regarding Leo's allergy around them. I looked directly at the jury, ordinary people, mothers, fathers, grandparents perhaps, and I told them my truth. Wayne's cross-examination was as brutal as Robert had predicted. He tried to paint me as an unstable, vindictive woman, obsessed with punishing her family. "Isn't it true, Virginia," he sneered, "that you've always resented your sister's close relationship with your mother?" "No, that's not true," I said calmly. "What I resent is them endangering my son. And this hidden camera," he continued, pacing before the jury box, "isn't that a rather extreme paranoid measure to secretly record your own family? When you have legitimate fears for your child's safety, and those fears are repeatedly ignored, you take whatever measures are necessary to protect him." He pushed, he prodded, he twisted my words, but I held firm, remembering Robert's advice. Stick to the facts. Don't let him get to you. Then came the video, the full, unedited footage. The courtroom was silent as it played on the large screens. The cooing voice of Natalia offering the peanut butter cookie, Leo's innocent trust, my mother's casual dismissal, my own desperate cries, and then Leo's wheezing, his small face contorted in panic and pain. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I saw one juror, a woman with kind eyes, wipe away a tear. Even Judge Miller's stoic expression seemed to tighten. Natalia and Joanna refused to look at the screens. Their testimonies were a disaster. Natalia went first. She tried to portray herself as a loving, if perhaps misguided aunt. She claimed she didn't realize the cookie had peanuts. Then, under Robert's incisive cross-examination, changed her story to say she thought Leo's allergy wasn't that severe. "So you decided to test that theory, Ms. Natalia?" Robert asked, his voice like silk-wrapped steel. "With a 5-year-old's life?" Her composure crumbled. She became defensive, argumentative. She even tried to blame me for not educating her properly about the allergy. Then came the text messages. Robert displayed them on the screen. Take matters into your own hands. A little exposure might do him good. Did you write these texts, Ms. Natalia? I don't remember, she stammered, her face flushing. You don't remember discussing how to toughen up your nephew by exposing him to a known life-threatening allergen? She had no credible answer. Joanna fared no better. She attempted to play the bewildered, heartbroken mother and grandmother, caught in the middle of a tragic misunderstanding. She claimed she had no idea Natalia intended to give Leo peanuts. Robert then presented her text messages. Sometimes a mother just knows best, even if it's not her mother. Is this you, Miss Joanna, advising your daughter to override the explicit medical instructions of Leo's actual mother? Joanna wilted. She contradicted Natalia's testimony on several key points. She appeared arrogant, entitled, and completely devoid of empathy. Wayne's attempts to rehabilitate them during redirect were futile. The damage was done. They had hung themselves with their own words and actions. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The speed was both terrifying and hopeful. When they filed back in, their faces were grim. I held my breath. Colin reached for my hand, his grip like iron. The foreman stood. On the charge of aggravated assault against Natalia, he read, his voice resonating in the silent room, we find the defendant guilty. A choked sob escaped Natalia. On the charge of felony child endangerment against Natalia, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of felony child endangerment against Joanna, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit child endangerment against Joanna, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all counts. A wave of profound, almost dizzying relief washed over me. Tears streamed down my face, tears of exhaustion, of sorrow, but also of a grim, hard-won justice. Natalia's face had crumpled into a mask of genuine, unadulterated panic and despair. Joanna looked utterly stunned, as if she couldn't comprehend what was happening. The arrogance was gone, replaced by raw terror. Then, as the judge began to speak about scheduling sentencing, Natalia lunged. She surged forward, her face contorted in a snarl of pure hatred, eyes fixed on me. You ruined my life, you bitch! She screamed, her voice raw and cracking. Bailiffs reacted instantly, grabbing her arms, restraining her as she thrashed and shrieked. Wayne looked horrified. Joanna just stared, her mouth agape, as her daughter was physically subdued. The courtroom erupted into chaos. But through it all, I met Natalia's wild, hate-filled gaze. She hadn't ruined my life. She had tried to ruin my son's, and now she was facing the price. The sentencing hearing a few weeks later was a somber affair. Natalia, stripped of her designer clothes and defiant attitude, looked small and broken in her county-issue jumpsuit. Joanna sat beside her, equally diminished, the fight completely gone from her. Robert had prepared me. Given the severity of the charges, the evidence of premeditation, and their utter lack of remorse until the very end, the judge will likely make an example of them. He was right. Judge Miller didn't mince words. Your actions, she said, her gaze fixed on Natalia and Joanna, were not just reckless, they were malicious. You targeted a vulnerable child, your own nephew and grandson, with a callous disregard for his life. The emotional trauma you inflicted on him and on his parents is immeasurable. For aggravated assault and felony child endangerment, Natalia received a sentence of 5 years in state prison. 5 years. A gasp went through the small gallery where a few of their remaining shell-shocked supporters sat. Natalia just stared blankly ahead, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. For felony child endangerment and conspiracy, Joanna received 18 months in county jail. Less than Natalia, but still significant. She closed her eyes, her shoulders slumping. Both received lifetime restraining orders, prohibiting any contact, direct or indirect, with me, Colin, or Leo. They were also officially registered as child abusers. Their names, their faces, would forever be linked to that database. The fallout for them was swift and brutal. Their social standing, once so important to them, evaporated. Friends they'd known for years turned their backs. The legal fees had already crippled them financially. Now, with prison sentences and ruined reputations, their futures looked bleak. Natalia's fiancé, who had stood by her through the trial with a bewildered expression, quietly broke off the engagement the following week. Joanna's book club, her charity committees, all politely but firmly, asked her to step down. They became pariahs in the community they once lorded over. Karma, as they say, can be a real bitch. There was no elation in their downfall, no triumphant fist-pumping from me. Just a deep, weary sense of an ordeal finally, truly being over. The fight had been harrowing. It had consumed me, changed me. I'd had to sever ties not just with my mother and sister, but with any extended family member who chose to enable their toxicity or pressure me to forgive and forget. The family tree had been brutally pruned. Leo started therapy. He talked about the scary cookie and the bad auntie and grandma. He drew pictures of himself with a superhero cape, fighting off monsters. Slowly, with love and patience and professional help, he began to heal. The nightmares became less frequent. His laughter, when it came, was brighter, freer. Colin and I focused on rebuilding our little sanctuary. Our home became a fortress of peace, filled with warmth and the comforting routines of a family safe and secure. We learned to breathe again, to trust again, though the scars remained. They always would. Sometimes, late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd think about Natalia and Joanna. I wondered if they ever truly understood the gravity of what they'd done, or if they just lamented their own ruined lives. I doubted it. Narcissism runs deep, but their thoughts, their fates, were no longer my concern. My concern was Leo, his bright smile, his boundless energy, his unwavering belief that his mommy and daddy would always protect him. And we would. We had. The other day, Kennedy came over for coffee. We sat on the porch, watching Leo chase butterflies in the yard, his giggles echoing in the sunshine. "You did good, Virginia," Kennedy said softly, her eyes kind. "You saved him. And maybe, just maybe, you saved yourself too." I thought about that. She was right. In fighting for Leo, I had also reclaimed my own voice, my own strength, my own right to be free from their poison. The price of peace had been high, devastatingly so. It cost me my family of origin. It cost me illusions I'd clung to for too long. But what I gained was infinitely more precious. They tried to break my son. They tried to break me. Instead, they broke themselves. And the quiet in my home, the sound of Leo's happy, healthy laughter, is the only vindication I'll ever need.